Today we're going to learn how to repair and maintain Tascam 388 tape machines. We're talking to expert Bigg Matt, but if you're only interested in Portastudios and cassette 4-tracks, check out my interview with Tetracan, where we're going to go over the most common problems that happen to Portastudios, how to diagnose them and fix them. Bigg Matt, what an impressive display you have there.
Big collection of too much junk, man. That's all it is.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, man, my pleasure, man. You always bring it every time, Travis. I really enjoy those videos, man.
Thanks so much, Matt. When I got my 388, I was searching, how to fix it. I had known nothing about it, and I saw your video. And your video, I don't know what it is about that video, but I've watched it so many times. That test tone tape, is that, you can get that anywhere, or is that specific to the 388?
It's just a generic test tone. They're called magnetic reference laboratory tapes. They're sort of expensive. For most of these 4-track machines, those tapes run about $140 a piece. With the 388, the best homemade tape that you can make for that is the original, of course, because it's recorded in monotrack. And that means that that same tone is printed onto that tape across the entire width of the tape. The second best recording you can make of that is taking that mono tape, put it on another machine, recording it onto that 8-track, all 8 tracks of the 388. And then you have a test tape. It's a second generation tape, test tape, that'll work great on that 388. And then, you can make your own tapes after that. Yeah, I try to get it close, man. I don't get too tied down in the details of having it perform exactly as it originally came out. Normally, I'm just happy to get these things operational again. I'll tweak them as far as I can go, but there's a point where you can keep diving into it and keep getting deeper and deeper, but there's really no payoff in the end as far as the fidelity goes on the machine, unless you go in and just do a total recap, change out all the transistors and all the components and stuff like that. Yeah, man, no doubt, man. Joined the Air Force right out of high school. It's about 25 years or so. I started off as a teletype repairman. If you ever seen a teletype, man, the old school teletypes, man, they were just 1,000 parts moving in sync, mechanical unit, bobbing up and down, moving all over the place. That's where I got the mechanical background of figuring out the mechanics of these machines. I had a Pioneer system that I picked up when I first came in the military. It was a Pioneer RT909. I let it sit for years. So if you don't use it, you lose it. That's what happened to 909. So did a little research, found that it usually is the belt that goes bad. Replaced the belt. I said, hey, this wasn't so bad. At that time, people were just giving these things away, basically. There was already a market for people wanting to buy refurbished reel-to-reel tape decks. So I started doing that about 1998, 1999. And that's why I'm here with this. And that's the stuff that I have now, man. That's how it all began. Just removing those cards, the boards that are behind the VU meters, pretty challenging to get into. On most modular type machines where you can pull the boards out and put in another board, they're fairly simple to access. With this 388, there's so many pins along the bottom part of the motherboard. It's hard to pry those things out. And I'm worried every time I put them in there, and I'll work on a few of these things, crossing my fingers that they go back into the right pins and the pins don't get bent. That's not to say that this takes a little time and care when you're doing those with the 388.
Do you think that, obviously it's still a really popular machine, even though they're really rare. Do you think they sound as good as people are raving about them, or what do you think?
They sound great. I tell people, man, that with the 388, it's not a very popular machine as far as in the reel-to-reel community, but it's great for the studio. It's not the best reel-to-reel player by any means. It's not the best board. There are plenty of better boards out there, but it's the only machine that combines the two, and it's a perfect unit for home recording. With the reel-to-reels in general, the recording shouldn't sound any better. If it's making an improvement to the music that you're putting into it, that's really not the goal of these things. It's supposed to reproduce what you put into it. People will say that, well, it adds a little flavor, whatever to it, or funkiness. My goal for these machines is whatever I put into them, I want that same signal to come out. You as a musician, Travis, you've got your ears tuned in to more of those variations, that analog sound, than I would be able to pick up. So you'd be a better judge at it than me. But for me, my goal is to just make that input or the output sound exactly like the input. It shouldn't add or take away any of the sound that's going into the machine. These machines don't come in that way. You're going to have some distortion or something like that. I'm trying to get rid of all that and replicate the input, the output.
I think what's funny is that like in the world of analog, everyone's always trying, like your whole goal is to get the greatest fidelity and prevent any of that distorted stuff happening. And then in the world of digital, it's so crystal clear that everyone's trying to add the distortion back in. So in the two different worlds.
As far as the 388 goes, I didn't know what a 388 was. I had an ad in Craigslist that says, hey, I purchased reel to reels. If you have one that's broken, I'm interested in. The guy calls me up and he asked me if I'm interested in a 388. So I had to Google it, man. Okay, that looks pretty decent. Selling for a decent price back then too. He wasn't asking very much for it. He said this would be a great project. I got it in. Generic problem. It needed a belt. Faders were a little distorted, a little scratchy. Cleaning up a little bit. Quick calibration, and it was up and running. Perfectly within about a week or so. So it's not very complicated to work on. But after that, man, whenever I saw a 388 at a decent price, I was all over those 388s, man. I still have a couple of them here now at the shop. I try to keep one in the shop all the time because sometimes people call me up and ask me about problems they're having with theirs. I try to duplicate that problem on the machine that I have, give them the information that I can, if I'm able to.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I got mine. I just, on a whim, the guy said it was broken, and I said, I'm just going to buy it for super cheap, and I don't know, worst case scenario is I can't figure it out. But oftentimes, because I've gotten a few machines for cheap that people say are broken, and I either find that it's a simple fix or it wasn't broken at all. It was just something very, very basic.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I feel a lot of people, I think most of my subscribers, they're musicians that are making music on their own, and they might just be getting into recording to tape. Every machine's different, and it depends on the particular problem. But maybe you could help us figure out what are some of the most easy things that are common issues that are easily diagnosable and easily fixable.
One of the main problems that you find on 388 or any other machine is one that sticks out right away is distorted sound. 99% of the time, it's because there's some type of debris on the heads. So clean those heads, man, every chance you get, especially, on a machine that you just picked up, you don't know the history of it or anything. Examine the heads, make sure they're super clean. All you need is a Q-tip and 91% alcohol. You can get that stuff from Walmart for a couple of bucks and just rub those heads, man, get all the debris off that you can. And when you're done, do it again, because I promise you, man, any kind of debris on those heads is going to give you some type of distortion. So once you've done that, just play a tape of a song that you're familiar with, so you can tell if it's playing at the right speed and if it's hitting all the notes that it should be. Playing a little slow, chances are the belt might be dragging a little bit, and that belt is on the 388 really easy to replace. The hardest part is tilting it on its side or laying it on its face and removing all those screws at the bottom to get access to that belt. Once you do that, man, the belt's really simple to replace on that 388. Another problem is the tape path itself. You start with a pinch roller. You want to make sure that isn't glazed over. You want it to have sort of a rough surface so it can press up against the tape and push the tape onto the capstan. The capstan is the portion from the motor that the belt connects to. That's what pulls the tape through onto the take-up reel. And you need that pinch roller to make good contact with the tape, and the tape to make good contact with the capstan, so that movement will continue to go without slipping any at all. So you want to make sure that pinch roller is kind of scuffed up a little bit. If it is glazed over, you don't need to run out and buy a new pinch roller. You can resurface it just using a regular drill and remove your pinch roller, put a little screw through it and a nut on either end, tighten it down really well so the pinch roller's kind of mounted to the screw. Put it in a drill, keep it straight, of course. As you're spinning it, just use regular sandpaper until you see that glaze removed from the pinch roller, because the only part that glazes is that surface area. Just a simple drill, sandpaper, and a little bit of pressure. Run it for a minute or so, and you'll see the results right away. Get that glaze off. There is a rubber rejuvenator that you can put on it, but
what do you think about that stuff, the reconditioner?
A guy had given me some. I use it because I have it, but I don't know if it makes a difference or not. It's just some kind of audio 456. I'm not sure how effective it is. If I wasn't using that, I don't think it would make a difference. If you wanted to put something on there, or just to clean the residue off, regular dishwashing liquid and water, and just make sure it's dry afterwards. Don't really use alcohol, because that can break down the rubber a little bit. And another thing with the tape path, you want to make sure those tension guides are really clean. Pull the cap off, take them off the little spindle thing, just clean them up really well. I use just regular, like, little silicone grease or lithium. This is called white lithium grease. I spray that in the little hole that's on the tension roller and dry it out, and then slide it back over the post that it goes on after you've lubricated it. And that's going to make it spin a lot easier if there had been any debris on there. The symptom that you'll have if it's kind of gummed up is a slow fast forward or slow rewind. That's because those tension rollers aren't spinning as freely as they should. Just clean those things up, lubricate them, and you should be off to the races after that. And don't get caught up on the name brand synthetic grease or anything like that. Just using any kind of grease will work, because you got to figure, man, most of these things were built 40 years ago and they're working up until this point with the old grease that they used back then. The problem comes into play when you let them sit for years on end and then that grease kind of hardens. The best maintenance for any of these machines is just constant use or semi-constant use, man. Don't let them sit for years on end. That's when the problems start.
Use it or lose it.
That's exactly right. If a machine is working with the belt that it has on there, you can take them off and measure them to make sure that they're about the right size, because belts stretch over time. Most belts do. But again, these things were built 40 years ago, and if they're still operational after all that time, a little bit of stretching on the belt, it's not going to hurt anything. If you're a stickler for perfection, then yeah, go ahead and change out the belt. Certainly not going to hurt anything to change out the belt, but sometimes you run across belts that have been on there for years, like some of these Akai units, and I'm not going to replace those belts if they're still operational.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. And like I said, man, there are different levels of maintenance depending on what you're comfortable with. It might irk somebody to know that there's a 40-year-old belt inside their machine and they just want to get that thing out of there. But more power to them. It's all good. The type of tape you use is going to make a huge difference. You can leave the settings where they are, like a Scotch 150 tape, you'll get one sound. Then you'll go into like a high bias tape, like the Scotch 200 series. You'll be able to tell a difference in the output, depending on what you're looking for, by just changing the formulation of the tape that you're using. Huge difference in that. Do you have a pretty good stock of tapes that you use to record over, man? I've got tons of them.
I only bought one tape ever. I'm still using it. I bought it a year ago.
Dude, man, look, send me your address, man. I've got boxes of old tapes. You'll get a different funky sound. You'll be able to tell immediately, man. I'll send you a box of these things.
Oh,
and
man.
Just experiment with them, man. And
that would be a fun video, man. That would be awesome.
That's what those bias adjustments and level adjustments are for. Match the formulation of the tape that you're using. That's why I tell people, what bias settings should I use? So, man, just experiment with it and see which one works best for you, because it's all, subjective. The manual will tell you, hey, put the equalization in position 1, put the bias in position 2 for this type of tape. You might like the sound better if you have those two reversed.
Matt, thank you so much for lending
your. My pleasure. This is awesome, man. Don't be a stranger, man. Give me a call sometime, anytime.
How can people contact you? Can they send you machines? What kind of machines can they send you? And a little bit about how people can get in touch with you.
I'm more interested in talking people through repairing the machines themselves. My number one goal is to show people how to fix their own machine, because most of the repairs aren't that complicated, especially if you've had your machine forever. You're just trying to get it going again. Most of the times you can do these repairs on your own.
That's cool, man. That's a cool mission.
I'm willing to help anybody, man, especially the guys that might have some tapes that their parents recorded when they were small. And you got to get those tapes playing again, man, so you can listen to your kids or your voices from way back in the day.